Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a September 11th edition of the MSP Initiative MSP Talk. September 11th, we all know that day. Bad things happened way back when, 2001. World changed, and you couldn't go through airport security the same after. I digress. Not trying to belittle it at all, by the way. Just saying, it definitely changed things for everybody that came after. That being said, this is a September edition of the MSP Initiative Live. Some housekeeping, mspinitiative.com. That's where you're going to find everything that we like to put in front of you, including but not limited to a recording of all the sessions we've ever done on audio and video format. It'll be on YouTube, podcatchers, etc. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, forward, download, all that good stuff. Of course, we have two um, MSP community block parties left for this year, 2025. We have one coming up in a little less than 30 days in South Beach in Miami. So if you're headed to DattoCon in Miami, which is the first week of October, or you just happen to be in South Florida and you're an MSP, we would love to see you at Live, which apparently is a hard place to get into on a regular night. The Live nightclub, which is at the Fountain Blue in South Beach, in Miami. We have taken over that whole joint. We will control and max out capacity for that venue. I promise you, based on what we did last year, we know exactly what to expect. But it is a great place and a good time. So looking forward to seeing you there. Check the information out at mspinitiative.com. Our second and final block party for the year will be at what used to be called DattoCon Sydney, which is now Kaseya Connect Global Sydney. I believe that's probably where we'll run into Colin, maybe. We'll talk about that in a second. But that is at the ICC in Sydney, is where that conference is at. We're running our block party literally across the street. So if you're headed to what used to be DattoCon Sydney, now called Kaseya Connect Global Sydney, or you just happen to be in the area and you're an MSP, please come. Again, these are totally designed for you. They cost MSPs nothing to attend, join, network, talk to your peers, have a beverage, eat something, community event. So those are the two remaining block parties for the year. We also are doing the Channel Sports Tour. Our actual first Channel Sports event is this upcoming weekend in Kansas City. We have 10 people who have been lucky winners to join us at that game. Eagles at Kansas City this week. It's actually going to be the game of the week in the NFL. I'm not trying to be biased, just being honest. So we're taking 10 MSPs to that game. It would be a good time. So look forward for some social media and looking for a good game. It's a Super Bowl rematch, just in a regular season game. Should have been the season opener, but Jerry Jones and his Dallas Cowboys. Anyway, so that is everything in the housekeeping department. You'll find all of that at mspinitiative.com. And here we are. We bring back a familiar face, Colin from Devicie. If you're listening to the audio version of that, and you were going to look up Colin after this, because we always remind people at the end as well. Colin's last name is Britton. I'm sure you can find him on like LinkedIn or whatever. And then Devicie is Devicie. And so we'll learn more about both. But if you're like, hey, I've never heard of these two things before, Colin the person and Devicie the company, at least I've spelled it for you so you can go back and type it in right. There it is. Welcome back, Colin. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me again. It's good to see
Absolutely.
both of us are actually in actual normal places last time. Because last time you were in the lobby of a hotel somewhere. Oh, at Newark, right? Because you were about to.
That's
Uh,
right. He has a
yeah.
very good memory.
And then I was actually at a train station in upstate New York. So at least this time we've kind of got our infrastructure little bit more sorted.
We are not out and about and stationary, which is good.
Yeah. So,
That's
but yeah.
awesome. So here we are, September 11th, 25. Everything always changes, but it's all the same, but it always changes. I don't know. You know, if you, by the way, this is our second session. So if you want to go back and, watch the first one. You'll find that at mspinitiative.com. Some highlights from the first one. I'm going from memory. I didn't take any notes. We talked a lot about Microsoft 365, which we'll talk about today as well. We went all over the place. It was a really actually interesting conversation, which I believe today will be as well. So I'm gonna hit you with the same thing that I've been hitting everybody with because, like, it's the topic of the day. And I keep on, if I take all the clips about what everybody's comments are about AI, by the time the end of the year comes, it'll be pretty entertaining, I think. In my mailbox, right before I started this session, literally less than 45 minutes, I got an email. And the email said, a 400 character prompt was enough to trick Lenovo's AI chatbot into leaking session cookies. That meant attackers could impersonate support staff and read private chats. And this practice is called prompt injection and model poisoning. Have you heard of those terms before?
Absolutely. If you're doing anything in the terms of engineering AI, then you need to be very familiar with those terms and how to work around it. And I think um, one of the topics that we talk about a lot from a product and engineering side on this is like, what are our ground rules, right? What are the behaviors that we want AI to have, right? What are our, like, it's almost like not so much a playbook, but it's like you know, a set of fundamentals, right? That like these are the hard and fast things that are in there, and one of which is for me is that AI shouldn't be able to do something without describing exactly what it's going to do to the person who's asking. And Microsoft for Security Copilot, that's one of their rules. You go and work in Security Copilot, you can ask it and say, can I reboot this or whatever, right? And it will actually come back and get you to affirmatively say, I want to do this thing, right? Here's what I've figured out, and I'm affirmatively going to go do that. And so you kind of build these ground rules around things. And, uh, in the kind of AI that we're developing, the guardrails also are there, right? So again, prompt injection is another one. You actually have to all the time look at what's being asked, right? And almost have the AI question itself as to whether or not that's a good idea within
Hmm.
within how you're doing things. So it's a super interesting area. We're going to hear more of these stories. They're going to come out, but there's also you know, there's a part of it which you can engineer into your product, which a lot of
Oh,
people are not doing.
okay. Okay. So I'm totally honest. I'm very big on transparency. I haven't spent a lot of time on the Copilot Microsoft flavor of things. Spent a little bit of time on the ChatGPT flavor,
Yep.
and like I've played with other things like 11 Labs and a few other tools. But let me just go as simple as you can log into something like HubSpot or Dynamics CRM, and it just says, point us to your documentation. And it just goes and crawls your KB or your internal documents or whatever. And then out comes a sales agent, right? Like the problem is that you probably didn't pay attention to what's in, where you sent it to look for things, right? Could have stuff that have been collating, but like you didn't pay attention to the volume. You just said, "Here's my filing cabinet. You can go through everything." Then all of a sudden, the technology starts doing what it says it's going to do, but the information that it's now dishing out is probably something you didn't expect it to dish out, but it was in the filing cabinet. I hope I'm saying it in a way everybody can understand. The problem is that it started off as a human being problem. Did you know everything that was in the filing cabinet? And the answer is usually no,
Yeah.
right? Like how many times has somebody put in a filing cabinet? And this is funny. I know this is an old problem, but like, by the way, I say it's old. This happens all the time, Colin. I've walked into professional offices recently, and I still see passwords on sticky notes. And you flip the keyboard upside down, and the password's underneath the keyboard, like old school. And you're like, people still do that? Yes. 100% still do this. And like that stuff could be in the filing cabinet, and then all of a sudden, you just have to be persistent or clever or both enough to keep prompting, asking questions to the technology, to the agent, and out comes the information you didn't want it to give, right?
Yeah. I mean, uh, this is not a new problem. This is an old problem. It's just the technology available has lowered the barrier to actually people accessing it.
Hmm.
And it's as much a control and access, right, as it is anything else. Like, you go and look at, obviously, we live in the Microsoft environment a whole bunch, but like, how have people got their SharePoint set up, right? So you bring
Yeah.
Copilot into your business and none of your data is labeled and you've got documents all over the place and you don't have, good controls in that area. Yes, you know, HR accidentally making available to the whole company the salary information of everybody in the business. That's probably not a good thing, right? So, there's you know, we shouldn't be shy of using the technology, but we should be diligent about how we introduce it and what happens. And your knowledge base article one is a really good example, right? There's a lot of knowledge base articles that could be old, right? They could be wrong, right? You're giving wrong advice. There could be ones that were meant for internal use with, as you say, like access codes or whatever in them for a support technician to use for escalating something or whatever, right? You got to like data labeling is a huge problem that people have to kind of pay attention to with it and organizing their data appropriately.
Yeah, it's a shame because like people have figured out a way to Fisher price this to some degree. And they're like, oh, it's so easy, right? One, two, three, in 3 steps, bam, the system just did all the work for you. And so they're being marketed to that it's easy. Technically, the steps to turn it on is easy. And then, but the legwork required to make sure that it's done right, like nobody did that part, right? So
Yeah.
I just have a feeling a lot of this will continue to your point, and I just want to point out, and everybody who's listening to this, be like, there's George again. He's just knocking it, knocking it, knocking it. He doesn't want to move with the times. I disagree. I love new stuff. I'm a bleeding edge guy. I just want it to work consistently and reliably. That's it. I mentioned in the last podcast, a reminder, McDonald's tried switching their drive-through to AI, shut it down. Wendy's tried it, shut it down. And Taco Bell, after getting 18,000 waters added to somebody's order at the drive-through, decided to shut it down. Like the drive-through experience at a limited menu fast food place should be very definitive. How many things can you do there? Like the menu is the menu. You could ask them to leave something off of that sandwich, that order, but at the end of the day, it is very narrow. But 18,000 orders, that's crazy.
Well,
I don't understand how that happened.
because within the design of these class of systems, you can't get away from the business rules, right? And if you haven't actually identified what your business is doing and how it works, then how can you expect AI to suddenly learn it, right? It's smart and does various things, but you've still got to teach it like the basics that you would, teach a high school kid who you've hired to actually put the order into a tablet, right? There's no difference. You've got to like create some basic kind of rules around things and some basic guardrails.
Yeah.
And uh, that's just skipping a step, right? That's just you haven't thought through your problem space very well. You've
Well,
got
in MSP land, I feel like a lot of MSPs, and again, I don't want to make a stereotype blanket statement, but the majority of MSPs actually in a backroom in a group text that I have going, somebody's like, "Hey, did you see so and so's industry report that came out?" And I was like, "No. Well, what? Why are you so hot and bothered about it?" He's like, "Well, it said that 60% of MSPs are north of $5 million." I was like, "I don't think that's accurate. I think that that's probably inverted. The majority of MSPs are not north of $5 million." If we want to make it
There was
51%.
some asterisks, small text at the bottom of that report that nobody
Okay.
read, right?
Okay. All right.
Something like 60% of the pool. What was the pool, right? Was the pool of private equity backed MSPs? Was the pool of MSPs who have done XYZ? Yeah, that doesn't
Sure.
like
Fine print's important, but let's just say, can we both agree that the majority of MSPs, of all MSPs on the planet, are probably not north of 5 million in annual recurring revenue?
they're probably not even north of 500,000.
Okay. So okay.
In my opinion.
Okay, no argument. We're just run with it, okay?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, most MSPs learn by failing forward. They don't have the time to go through a proper testing and evaluation period before they adopt new technology. Agree or disagree?
Most customers are not willing to pay for it, which is why most MSPs don't do it.
Fair, fair.
How about that statement?
No, no, that's alliance, right? Hey, the
Yeah.
customers want to pay for it. So this could be you took on a customer project to figure it out, right? And you're learning and like there's a little bit of time burn in there for you to get to the point where like, hey, you've launched whatever the answer is that you're trying to sell. Fine. But they probably start remediating problems as they come up in that scenario. They didn't do all the work up front, right?
Yeah. So, but that's why solutions like Devicie or similar products exist, right? We are here to be the fast track, the easy button to getting a set of technology in a good place, right? And that's why, you know, rather than starting with, well, we work in Microsoft Intune, we work in Microsoft 365. It's incredibly powerful. With great power comes great complexity, right? So it's unlikely that the people we're talking about have the knowledge or the time to acquire the knowledge, because it's
Yeah.
not hard to find, it just takes time, in order to get it set up appropriately. So what you need is solid baselines that do what people want in a reliable and predictable manner in order that you set yourself on a good track, right?
Okay.
And if you start from there, you can get to right.
Pause. Okay. I'm gonna pause right there. I'm gonna let you go back to that though in a second. So can you maybe answer the question to the average person listening to this? What is the difference between the new branding of Microsoft 365, which is now called Copilot 365, and me going to a local electronics store like Best Buy and picking up a computer that says it's a Copilot enabled computer? What's the difference?
So Microsoft 365 is the management platform for the set of tools and capabilities to run an organization. Like, we all know Microsoft licensing is incredibly complicated because there's a lot of different pieces in it, but the bundles of that stuff typically come into a number of areas. There's what's called business standard. So ignore all your retail stuff, right? Because if you're not buying a product that says Microsoft for business,
Mm,
then it's not part of that. If you're buying
okay.
hardware, it doesn't say Microsoft for business, it's not part of that ecosystem. When you get to Microsoft 365, it is the management platform and the security platform for all things Microsoft. Starts a business standard at the bottom, which is pretty much an unmanaged platform. Business Premium is the next layer, up to 300 seats, and provides a management capability. And now they offer add-ons to that Business Premium for security, so you can get their full security stack. Once you get over 300 seats, you jump into that enterprise licensing, E3, E5. You've then got all sorts of licensing for academic, for frontline workers, et cetera, et cetera. It gets very, very complicated.
Like a government
But
version
for,
of that, a nonprofit version of that, yada yada yada.
yada,
Okay.
yada, yada.
So
But for
so
most,
so
but for most MSPs, they're going to live in business standard, business premium,
what
and
happened to business
understanding.
basics? Is it
Yeah,
still there? Is it still
I don't,
around?
I, I don't know. I don't live in that world.
Okay. All
The
right.
we
So if they're buying a Microsoft Surface laptop
Yeah,
and it says it's a Microsoft Surface Copilot laptop, does that
not for
align with
business.
anything? For
Uh,
business.
yeah. So that basically is a hardware branding capability that, yes, it can run some AI inside it, but with the for business piece, along with your Microsoft 365 platform, you can manage that endpoint from Intune, from the Microsoft 365 environment, and you can get things uh, like
So the
your autopilot and auto patch and
okay.
application management, blah 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 blah.
So the idea is that you hand somebody a uh, Microsoft Business computer, laptop, Surface, whatever
Yep.
profile of that, tablet. They sign in with their username and password that they've been issued from their organization, business, company, whatever. And it's going to start the wheels of turning everything on that they're supposed to have without having to send it to someone in IT to configure it at a time and then have them turn around and send it out.
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
if you're using Microsoft 365 platform, your business premium, and you got it set up correctly, then there's some basic benchmarks that you should be talking about. We talk about shrink wrapped email in 30 minutes. So that's an autopilot experience where you literally open the shrink wrap, log in with your credentials, and the machine will, with one reboot, configure itself, put all your policies in place, get Office in place, your productivity suite in place, and be connected to your Microsoft email in less than 30 minutes. That's the kind of experience that people want to get out of it. Unfortunately, getting that set up in Intune is a lot of work for people unless they're using one of the companion tools for Intune, which accelerate that solution, such as what Devicie does. And then at the same time, you should be able to get things like, patching within 72 hours of a patch release. Your endpoint analytics score, which is a basic Microsoft score about how well your machine is productive and secure, should be above 75, right? There's all these different criteria in it. And that best practice set is, you know, MSPs who are getting into the Microsoft 365 space should have like, this is our benchmark, right? And I think one of the challenges we have with this environment in the new cloud native Microsoft manner is that people don't know what good looks like, right? Going back to your original thing, the SharePoint not set up the labeling, they don't know what good looks like. And so you need that set of things, right, that are laid out for you, which should commonly be applied.
Okay, what about mobile devices? I would say the average business likely will issue somebody a work computer. That's, I would say, status quo. I don't know how many people are just letting anybody sign in from anywhere. I would argue that that's a bigger concern than anything. But I
Yeah,
don't find the same level of concern when it comes to, hey, add your, Outlook account to your iPhone.
yeah. So BYOD laptops are, in my opinion, a rare thing and probably shouldn't be allowed, right? But there's too many risks. There's too many issues around that kind of thing because taking a person's laptop and saying now you can't have a USB connected or you can't do this, that, or the other, right? Some common things that you should be doing from a security perspective. BYD laptops generally just not a good idea. BYD phones, very, very common. My phone here, sitting on my desk here, is my own personal device. I got a new Pixel 10 last week. I am a Google Pixel nerd. I've always had Google's hardware, but it's a BYOD device from a corporate perspective. And so again, if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, you can have a sandboxed uh, approach inside that to connect your Outlook to an iOS or Android device and know that if the person leaves or whatever, it's going to just wipe that sandbox without taking over control of the phone. You're not completely controlling their phone. You can do all of that stuff, you know. But again, it takes you've got to have the configurations. You've got to have it set up appropriately.
Um,
We got a long way from AI here, but these are fundamentals
no,
of
no, I
how
mean,
do we work in a cloud native way, right?
listen, I mean, but AI is just the new thing, the new shiny toy. And by the way, cool new shiny toy. Every toy has its place. Every let's call it tool. Fine, tool. Every tool has its place.
I
Uh,
always say, don't be a tool.
that's true too. I think the challenge for me is I'm still running into a lot of, I don't know if you are too, but let me see. I'm still running into a lot of MSPs who are not 100% in the cloud, meaning like There's still a lot of hybrid. There's still a lot of prem-based stuff. There's still maybe an Active Directory or Server 2000, whatever out there. And like maybe net new people have started in 365 and that's it. But I'm finding people who have been around for a while, like if an MSP started in 2000s or 2010s, not a huge percentage of their total clientele and their management are 100% in on cloud only. And so, maybe some of them have been able to piggyback off of like Microsoft's AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop, and like move some people there that are on, line of business apps that aren't totally cloud native, like for some stuff. But I generally still run into, and I'm just going to do this, put my finger in the air. Maybe about half of the clients are still hybrid. What are you seeing?
I think half is generous. I think there's a couple of things to comment on in that. First is most MSPs are using a management platform of some type. You know,
Sure.
very few people are doing it without platform assistance.
Yeah, like
And
an
so
RMM of some
an
sort.
RMM,
Yeah,
right? So whether it's Kaseya, Enable, whatever, right?
sure.
None of them are truly cloud native, right? In the Microsoft name of cloud native. They may have some, features that kind of, but at the end of the day, chances are they're just using, if they're using Intune at all, it's just to drop the RMM agent. And from that point onwards, it's just the RMM,
Yeah,
right? So,
for
and I
sure.
would say that's the vast majority of where the world is right now. Part of that is because a combination of things. Microsoft's licensing hasn't exactly helped, isn't exactly MSP friendly.
Fair.
Um, and Microsoft have, I'll use the word, not paid attention to the space. Now, what's
Why? Why? I mean, didn't they
because,
roll out? Wasn't Lighthouse supposed to be the beginning of like some MSP initiative, and
yeah,
then like
yeah,
not
I
MSP
would,
initiative, a MSP initiative, and then
mhm.
like I still get emails about Microsoft doing MSP community calls every so often, but like it didn't really translate into something functional.
uh, Microsoft is I always describe Microsoft as a super tanker, and the top 200 customers are the rudder, right? And we're all along for the ride. And it turns slowly, but it is a force that you are not going to be able to push against, right? And yes, they started paying attention. And so things like Lighthouse, a tool to help MSPs, right? But licensing changes, like the things we've just seen around Microsoft security, indicate that they are paying more attention to not just some tooling around it, but the whole ecosystem of MSPs. And there's actually, you know, on LinkedIn, it's been teased. There's going to be an announcement next week. I'm not no shocker here. It's been teased. They're making some MSP announcements next week, and they are in a Microsoft way becoming more MSP centric. And
Did they? What was the hint?
just like say, heads up, it's
Okay.
a save the date type post. But one of
Okay.
the hashtags on it is MSP, and yeah, and the people who posted it were all people who were in and around uh,
Well,
this area of the
that's
space.
intriguing. I wonder what it could be.
Yeah, I wonder what it could be. And so that whole area, like they are paying more attention and the heading in the space. I'll go back to statement. Vast majority are still on RMM of some type,
Yeah.
even if they've got a little bit of cloud native. If Microsoft's paying attention over time, more and more pressure will build on if you want these things, then you need to be cloud native. You need to be in the Microsoft 365 environment. If you want SharePoint to run correctly, if you want to use Purview for data loss prevention, if you want Defender for endpoint, if you want blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, these things you are paying for in your license bundle, then you need to be Microsoft Cloud Native. Simple as that. That's the only way it's going to work for people in the future. Getting on board that train and getting those skills and getting those areas is the challenge that a lot of MSPs are going to have.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So let me go this way. Um, I heard I think may have even been in between the last session and this session, like Microsoft's SMB business, and I guess the definition of SMB or SME to Microsoft is 1,000 users and below. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I think that's what it is like very small part of their business. Is that right? Am I?
No,
No. So if
just
you
look,
were to,
just look at, just look at the, just look at Pax8's Microsoft revenue, right?
sure.
Just look at distribution, right? So Microsoft direct selling is very much just the big accounts, and it's huge numbers, and you know, depending on how you look at how it breaks out. But you know, it's this long tail through distribution. You just look at the channel changes. So you know, the Canalys have just published some opinion pieces on the changes around Microsoft's ecosystem, and they're changing what defines as a minimum bar for a CSP. So
Hmm.
for you to be a Microsoft partner, that minimum bar has been raised. They are changing distribution minimums for distributors, which is really going to cause mass consolidation in that space. But they are cleaning up that from their perspective, whether or not you like it or not. They are cleaning up those definitions and areas within it. I look at the SME SMB thing as business premium is limits itself at 300 seats. So that
Hmm.
to me is a line there. That's a very clear line, and it goes
All
to
right. So forget a
e-licensing,
thousand, three
enterprise,
hundred. Okay.
300, and you go
Okay.
to E at that point and step up from there. We typically see that I think it's 2,500 is the cutoff point in some internal Microsoft things around programs where you step up from being one size to the next size. So you've got those kind of two boundaries that are there. And again, these are global numbers, and of course, US versus somewhere else in the world. Obviously, Devicie originates in Australia. That's where the business has grown out of. That's very different. Businesses with more than 500 seats in Australia represents 0.2% of the businesses, where in North America, or sorry, in the USA, it is 2%.
Hmm.
So there's just many more bigger companies in the States. So your lines are quite different in those areas. But uh, you know, going back to it though, if you want to get the capabilities out of this Microsoft stuff, if you want things like Copilot to work properly for you, if you want all of that integration of pieces together, then you need to be cloud native managed, right? You need your endpoints to be managed in that ecosystem, and that's going to come via Intune.
Okay.
You know, if
Hold
you're
on. Time out.
using something
Time
else,
out.
yeah,
Anybody can go to Microsoft 365, Office 365, whatever, all the domains, they all lead back to one page. And you could just sign up, right?
yeah,
I could just buy, put my credit card in, and off I go. So like, why do I even need an MSP if Microsoft's just going to take my money and turn it on?
because you need to get all this stuff configured, right?
Okay.
You know, whether you're the largest corporation in the world or a one-man shop, if you buy that Microsoft license, it does nothing without configuration for you, right?
So they're going to do nothing for me.
They're going to provide you a technology stack which you can do many things with.
Okay. But it's going to be completely blank, unconfigured.
Very low bar, yeah.
Okay. So like if I sign up and they ask me my industry in the sign up process and I say I'm a doctor's office, they don't have anything specific to my industry that they apply.
No, no. At most, and because they want to be, there's a lot of nuance in all of the things, but generally speaking, if you start with a default set of settings and a very low thing, you've got pretty productive but not particularly secure device, right?
Okay.
There's
Fine.
some obvious things, but you know, depending on your business, you may have different criteria and requirements. You know,
I
having
would think
USB ports turned off if you need to plug in or having USB storage devices turned off if you're a design agency is probably a problem, right?
so.
So you can't have that by default. But if you're a bank, then absolutely USB storage devices should be turned off on most people's laptops. That's a very
Okay.
simple configuration example, which is,
It's
you know,
actually most compliances I think require it, at least the ones that I see on a regular. All right, so let's
yeah,
flip the conversation the other way to MSP now. I argue with the industry talking heads that say, hey, anybody who needs an MSP likely already has one, and you're only getting new clientele because they're leaving another MSP. I don't think that that's true, but let's just go with the idea that it's true for 5 minutes. If you're adopting new clientele from another MSP, not all MSPs are created equal. And we know we said meant earlier, just in this call, we said, hey, like everybody's sometimes they're just failing forward, they're learning as they go. It's not 100% right from the beginning, et cetera, et cetera. So likely they're inheriting some mess, right? Like the filing cabinet's a little bit, you know,
they're inheriting something.
sorted.
Doesn't
Yeah,
matter whether it's a mess or not.
sure.
How long does it take to understand what is there, whether it's a mess or not, right?
Okay. How long does it take for me to figure out what's there?
If you're going to do it just with humans, it takes a lot of time. Most customers are not prepared for the MSP to charge them for that onboarding time. And so that is a rub there. Doesn't matter whose management platform you're using or whatever else, right? That onboarding time. And so having tools, having capabilities which are able to let you compare and contrast what have you got versus my own gold standard, right? Is super important in all of that area. And you
So
don't get that out of, Microsoft don't provide that.
okay. So if Microsoft doesn't define what the gold standard is, and I have no clue what the gold standard should be as an MSP, does CompTIA have the gold standard recommendation? Like, is there some industry association that says, hey, like this is what we suggest for this type of, like, I haven't seen that. Who sets that?
Obviously, vendors like ourselves have our view of what is a good foundation and a good benchmark for different levels of security maturity. We actually call our support Devicie IO, Devicie Informed and Opinionated. We have opinions about what is an appropriate way to do things. You can choose to listen to us or not. They're opinions, right? But those opinions are informed by a team with many years of expertise in how you do this in the Microsoft environment. And so we bring along to people a set of foundational capabilities which they can very quickly get it. We also provide comparison tools. So you can say, you go in, start up a new client, connect to it, and you can say, what have I got versus what do we think it should be? And then start talking to your customer about from a remediation perspective, not a diagnostic perspective. Like, you go to the doctor, right? Do you want to pay for diagnostics, right? Or do you want to pay for remediation? Yeah. I
Well,
don't want I want the doctor to sending me off for a bunch of tests without actually some understanding about what are
it's
the tests
usually
going
the
to do
other
for
way
me and
around
everything
when I
else.
go to the doctor. They're just like, hey, I think you have a problem, and we need to go run a blood test to make sure that you don't have a problem, right? Like that's kind of sort of how it goes. But okay, yeah, like I
Yeah,
got
but I mean, you know, uh, it's funny. So like things like MRIs, like so you go for an MRI, and the MRI report doesn't just cover the thing that you looked at, but it covers the whole area that they looked. And all of a sudden, the doctor's saying, "We should go and look at that thing." I'm like, "But I went into this, right?" That whole understanding piece, providing clarity around that, so you can say, "Yeah, this is where you are, and this is what we consider good is, and this is the delta, and these are the things we should care about remediating immediately. These are things we should care about less, right?
it.
And have a conversation. And that changes the dialogue with your customers around it all
So
of the time. So
how many gold standards like do you have? I assume that the industry of the end customer makes a difference in what the standard should be, or do you have like a generic, this is the minimum any business should be, and then do you go for like how does that work?
yeah, so we've got a set of foundational templates which cover all different things. A good example would be we've got foundational templates for Edge and for Chrome. Now, some business could say, we're not going to allow Chrome in our business, in which case you change which Chrome template you're deploying. That's a mix and match piece of it. And then you have security maturity. And so all our policies are mapped against CIS controls, which
Hmm.
is a benchmark of that everybody cares about. Now, while CIS 3 is a bit kind of on-prem large org, CIS 4 is out and we're mapping to that. That's a much more approachable set of standards, but CIS is generally considered to be the security benchmark. And then those controls we map into maturity models. So you could have your base, secure and productive. And most people want a machine that's, you know, got most of the common places plugged up, but, allows the user to be able to do that. But you could be in a scenario where you need a much more secure machine than that. So it's not just a general knowledge worker or a general office worker, but you're in a place where you do need to be much more compliant. You can go up to a level 2 maturity, which will restrict certain things the machine can do. And, in terms of applications that can run. So in your lowest level, you may not do application blocking, so people can run anything. But your level 2, you're probably doing application blocking. So you can only run applications that were installed via the infrastructure. And all of that stuff is a mix and match that's designed to work together. Where if you kind of start to build that from scratch, it's an awful lot of work from Microsoft, and there's a lot of kind of toing and froing with it. And chances are you don't have one profile in the business, right? And the MSP certainly probably doesn't have one profile of customers either. So you probably need some users who are maturity level 2, some are 1.
Okay, all right. So use case here. I'm an MSP. I'm gonna come in and do my free network diagnostic because that's what everybody seems to offer to walk in the door, right? Oh, I'm gonna check out what you have and tell you what it's gonna cost if we want to go down the road together. Um, if I'm in a prospective mode, how much time is involved, human being time, to sign into the current environment and do this comparison?
If you're doing it without tooling, a lot of time, you
Sure.
know,
But if I'm using your platform, how much time?
you're connected to their Intune environment in about a minute. The comparison's available to you immediately after that. And then understanding that comparison is there. But we're talking about something which normally take tens of hours. Like I've had people quote 40 to 60 hours to fully understand an
Hmm.
Intune environment for a few hundred machines to really understand all the things that are running. And you need to get to that much quicker. We are one of the solutions that will assist with that. There are others out there, depending on your familiarity with the Intune environment, but we certainly accelerate that. That's one of the big pieces of value we
But
look to
but it
do.
but Intune is like a sub-component of the larger Microsoft 365 stack. Does it check
Yes.
Exchange? Does it check Teams? Does it check SharePoint? Does it check OneDrive? Like, there's a lot of pieces there.
Yeah. So think about Intune as the organizational hub for the endpoint,
Hmm.
right? So Entra is the organizational endpoint for their person, right?
Hmm.
And you know, Intune is the organization for the endpoint. So
Hmm.
when you look at that endpoint, any setting that's to do with Defender for endpoint, for your teams, for Office, for OneDrive, or et cetera, those settings are managed and pushed centrally via Intune. And
Okay.
so that is your kind of core switching center of the endpoint management. Once you get outside of the endpoint management and you're into the informational organization, then you're in the SharePoint world and that kind of area, and then things like Purview from a DLP, et cetera, come around that. If you're talking about humans and conditional access and that thing, and privilege management and all that kind of stuff, that's Enter. So there you kind of 3 big blocks.
So
And
you're literally plugging an extension cord into the back of their entire account through this one part that just has veins to everything else. It's
yeah,
going to run this report and it's going to give you what? A PDF or something that says, here's what the standard is. Here's what your prospective customers, situation is compared to the standard, and what? A score, a percentage, an Excel spreadsheet. What do you see?
so there's multiple different things. When you're looking at the policies, you're literally comparing policy sets and saying, we recommend you have this policy, you don't have this policy, right? Or you've got this policy, we recommend this policy. That's a policy sets around. And that's things like sort of management and firewall settings and all of that kind of stuff. When you elevate from that and say, talk to me about the state of my environment, then you're mapping against a CIS benchmark and
Mhm.
getting a security score. And Microsoft have a number of endpoint scores available within their, they calculate within their platform anyway. So you've got secure score and you've got endpoint health score, etc. And they're the things that you kind of pull out. And that stuff's all available, but you got to know how to go dig for it and how to interpret it. And we help with that. We help with streamlining the digging and also with the interpretation.
Okay, so you go into your prospect, you press the buttons, the wheel spins. It's like, psh, there's a lot of work to make it this compared to what we suggest is the standard. You can decide if you want to do all of these after the fact. So let's say they then turn around to this prospective customer. They say, "Hey, listen, it's kind of not where it needs to be. Like the default settings were just never gone away from. This is like I just opened your Microsoft account and nothing was done, right? I'm gonna have to do all this work to make it right. Here's a proposal." They sign on to the proposal. How quickly can they remediate the gap?
Uh, how long is a piece of string, right? That's it's there's
Depends.
many, it depends, right? Now, there are many paths, I think is probably the thing to do that. But let's say you're coming from an RMM
Mhm.
and you're going to go and um, and you're coming across Windchill managed. So you can establish what the correct um, structures are for the different groups of users and then start to enroll devices. And different organizations do it different ways. Some do it via device refresh. So
Mhm.
it's like as we add new machines, we do this, or they do it department by department and work on through. But you can do all of this in a non-invasive manner for most people. It all depends on what you're remediating against,
That's
right?
fair.
Is this a situation where it's such a kind of sticky mess that we actually want to wipe the floor clean before we, give them the new tools in order that we know that it's done correctly?
But
Or
I
is
I would say most MSPs are just going to try and keep what's there running until the customer's willing to spend money, which is not until it breaks down.
Yeah, well, and or they've got a compliance problem and or some other compelling event, right? There'll be some compelling event around them doing this. But generally, you can start to bring things under management in a very much in a transitionary manner as you
Okay.
kind of go through that.
So how much of your platform applies to the other side of things? And I kind of drove by it briefly, but I'm going to bring it back up again, like the Azure virtual server, virtual desktop, like that whole realm, which I guess kind of fits into 365 because I think they came out with virtual PC SKUs at some point in the last couple of years. But like, I don't want to get too crazy here. Do you go down that road?
So um, anything which can be managed in Intune is fair game, right? Now, AVD is a little bit of a separate beast because it is around, you've got these machines that you're taking up and down, and uh, that's a lot more about provisioning and accounting, and that's a very particular thing. But Microsoft have a product, let's go confuse people with their Microsoft's product naming, called Windows 365.
Ah, that's it.
And Windows 365 is a managed virtual device that is assigned to a user in a similar way to a laptop would be, but it's virtual. And as opposed to AVD, which is very much a different beast from it. So this is the simplification, I would guess, way of putting it of AVD. And they manage well in Intune. And for some organizations, that's a good way to go about doing things. Let's say you're an organization that has managers that drive between stores, but they want to be able to log into their email. Then having a Windows 365 device probably makes sense because rather than them sitting down at a desk, logging into a desktop, which then builds their environment, etc., they're much easier to. That's a good use case of Windows 365, where you've got somebody who floats and they're sitting in front of a piece of hardware that's not their hardware all the
That's
time.
Okay. So the answer is because it lives inside of 365, you can manage it.
Intune can manage it, therefore we can assist with that management.
Got it. Interesting.
Kiosks is another example, right? You can have kiosks in Windows. Again, they can be managed in Intune. Um, checkout registers, a lot of them run Windows. Yeah. They can be managed with Intune.
Uh, until you run
Teams
into
rooms.
this, wasn't there something called Windows Embedded, or like it's like a stripped down version of Microsoft operating system? I don't know if it's still around, but like some of these things still run like some pretty not off the shelf stuff.
Well, off a different shelf, yes. But you've got a lot of the going down the checkout terminal route. A lot of them are Windows 10 based still, and that's
Yeah.
still appropriate. That is not part of the end of life, but they are manageable devices. As I said, Teams rooms is another example of something you can manage with Intune.
That's cool. So, what's a typical size MSP that adopts Devicie? Is it, and we talked about how like you said 500,000 is north of 5 million in annual revenue. We're gonna stick with that. So like the average MSP is smaller than 5 million in annual recurring revenue. They probably don't have a lot of centralized tools people because they can't afford, dedicated people who sit in the background and do scripting. Probably why the RMM is probably the same in the same boat, right? Like if it doesn't do it off the shelf, it's not happening in a lot of cases. So like what's a typical size MSP that adopts Device, and then how does that apply across all of their customers? Is it just a small subset of customers you see them adopting this with, or are they able to really use it across the board?
I mean, there are many different paths, but let's talk about two particular MSP profiles we work with. The one is what I would call Microsoft emergent. So they have seen this Microsoft, you know, uh, path that is coming, whether it's come to them because their customers said, we've got this Microsoft environment and we want it managed better, or whether it's come because they've gone, hey, Microsoft's providing all this stuff and we want to make it useful. And
Mhm.
they are much more emergent of it. And it is a transition plan and customer by customer as they move along with renewals or as the customer wants to go there. So, and I would say in those instances, it is a part of their business that they are moved over, and as they get more experienced, and as they then can go and talk to their other customers about, hey, there's a better way than the way we've currently been doing it to give you more capabilities. And that's very much an emergent group from that, and they are learning the Microsoft path from a Microsoft 365 perspective as they go through that. And then at the other end of the scale, you have got the more at scale MSPs who typically have a you know significant pool of technicians. And as they grow their business, not all of them are Microsoft experts. They do have their Microsoft experts, but they don't want them to be going around and having to run around between different technicians and different customers and everything else. And they have a scale problem, right? The problem is adding the number of technicians per customer, right? That leverage point is what they really want to get out because that's what the RMM gave them, right? Was how many endpoints per technician they could support. Well, in the Microsoft environment, that they've been ratcheted back on that because it's not naturally multi-tenant, and so they want a multi-tenant and they want baselines and they want to be able to consistently manage things and app platforms and all that stuff. They want the tool stack to be appropriate to allow them scale cost effectively. That's the other end of the scale.
Yeah, no, I dig both of those profiles, and I think that applies to a large majority of the space. So what are you solving for at Device and you mentioned a bunch of them, right? Kaseya, Datto, ConnectWise, JMF, all these different RMMs out there, right? Why don't they do the same thing?
Well, they do the same thing in their own way, right? But if you want to be in the Microsoft environment and you want to be using all of the capabilities that Microsoft's given you, right, then Microsoft says you've got to control most of that stuff via Intune. And the way that the RMMs have traditionally done it, which is you drop an agent and then the agent controls the endpoint, doesn't work, doesn't align with what Microsoft wants you to do in order to get all of the other capabilities out of it. And Copilot is one of the sticks that is beating on that particular drum, right? Because to get Copilot, and to go back to what we talked about earlier, that it doesn't give away information you want. You need your endpoints organized properly. You need your data organized properly. You want that out-of-box experience where people can log in immediately and you don't have to have a device pre-built in the shop, which can take hours of IT time, right? You want self-service in that kind of area. I just want to touch back on another one we're seeing, and we're probably going to run out of time pretty soon, but this is probably a topic for a whole nother conversation, which is something we're starting to see emerge more and more, which is the shared responsibility model. So this is
Like co-managed, I call it, right? Like,
co-managed, yeah, yeah, and
like
that
so just to make sure we're clear, right? Like the customer's large enough that there's somebody on staff, not the MSP staff, the customer staff, who is doing some work separate but together with the MSP staff.
yes, correct. And that, particularly in the Microsoft 365 environment, is an area that we see more and more, where they may have some staff, but they want that extra expertise on top, right? They want to be able to get some of this lifting done, but not have the challenge of retaining skills in house.
So you help with that how? Because you can extend certain functionality without God mode access?
Yes, and without the MSP retaining God mode access.
Huh.
So you can have this establish the environment, get it running, do all of the things, and then maintain the visibility on security side or visibility on health, right, without changing things, right? And that coordination, because the permissioning model we do is very much around the customer's environment is the customer's environment, and their entra and their permissioning and everything is that customer's environment. When we do multi-tenant, our system is getting a privileged access to that customer environment just to do the things that we need to do, and the customer can revoke that at any point, right? And we can manage those permissions going on through. And so we see co-managed shared responsibility increasing, and it's for certain MSPs, it's a growing market, right? Because they want to be able to acquire the skill, they want to be able to get the outcomes, but that IT team is not going to acquire all the skills.
That's fair. That's fair. I like what you're doing. By the way, this is our second session with Colin and about Devicie. By the way, the first session was a very industry zoom out, so you should go back and watch that one or listen to that one. That was good. This one was a little bit more into the weeds, but um, bottom line, the typical RMM solution, and I didn't mention other ones. There's Ninja, there's Synchro, there's all the
Yeah,
other ones, but it just doesn't handle the Microsoft 365, Intune, and all the various other components, right? OneDrive and SharePoint and Teams very well, right? Like they just don't give you, they may
they
give you
don't
some
handle it.
they can give you
They don't handle
visibility,
it.
you know.
Yeah, they don't handle it in the way Microsoft wants it handled. And
That's a whole can of worms, right? But bottom
yeah,
line is it's not that those tools generally are not robust enough to do what we're talking about. And as a person who's run an MSP and been there, right? And by the way, I agree. They don't want you to pay for they don't want to pay for onboarding. They want that to be your problem. But 60 hours, 50 hours, 80 hours, 100 hours, man, I would argue that's low. I've seen it double that sometimes,
yeah,
depending on how much you're cleaning up and getting to your standard, right? So I love anything that gives you the competitive edge to quickly help you in the prospecting phase is gold. Any tool that can help you there, I would be using that as early and often as you can. But then comes the hard work. It's actually you signed the deal, you got the customer. Now, what does it take to get to running? The way that you're not getting overwhelmed every time there's a problem, and you sure as hell can't roll a truck or a car every time to show up either. That breaks the whole business model.
Yeah.
This is
And,
something.
that, yeah, and that's the promise of what Microsoft are bringing with Microsoft 365 and everything being cloud native, right? Which
Yeah.
is it is an integrated suite of capabilities, and their argument is use our security, use our endpoint management, use our knowledge management in SharePoint, etc. And if you get it, if you set it up appropriately, then it's highly productive and secure for customers. And that's what people want, right? And yeah, there's other ways of getting there, but Microsoft's argument is the 365 environment is the way to do it.
No, I'm with you 100%. We'll do another one of these sessions and we'll go deeper into the co-managed thing. I think there's some value there. Um, Colin, where do people, I assume like we're about to go into what I call the gauntlet of the event schedule in the MSP industry. Between now and the end of 2025, are there any places, events, things that you're going to be in person at that people can find
Yeah,
Device?
so me or our team are at all the usual suspects. So you mentioned Sydney. We got people there. We are going to be, we're actually in Australia, New Zealand, doing a roadshow with Huntress, which is super interesting. Love those guys. Again, another interesting solution to piece together in pieces of it. I'm Workplace Ninjas is a Microsoft 365 thing. We're doing that in Dallas in December. I'm doing that in Vancouver, Calgary next week. I'm with PAX 8 next week in Vancouver. We are at Miami. We're there. Loads and loads of events. Pretty much if it's an MSP event occurring for the rest of the year, we are going to be there at some level. Come along and find us. We've always got some interesting swag, and interesting conversations to be had all along the way.
Awesome. So Devicie.com.
IT.com. Yep. Colin Britton on LinkedIn. Yeah, love to talk to anybody anytime. And again, George, fun hour, and look forward to doing it again. Maybe we can pick a topic like not about what we do. Like I always love having these conversations, and I do want people to understand what we do and how we can help them. But I also care about this industry. I've been around it for a long time, and it's it's always interesting to talk about it and kind of work on through that.
The first session we did a lot of that, but hey, current events, right? Things are consistently changing, and I'm always interested to see how much people are willing to talk about those things that are changing. But hey,
Hey,
uh,
I'm not short of an opinion, so it's all good.
I love opinions. I love opinions. Colin, this was awesome, guys. This was recorded. Please go back and watch both of them. They're both really good content. I promise that intriguing. Definitely the first one as well. MSPinitiative.com under sessions recorded. Just put in Devicie. It'll come up, both of them. You'll find us on YouTube, Podcatcher, all that good stuff. Remember to register for the block parties. You're going to see both of us. Me and Colin, hopefully, will be able to grab a drink in person in Miami, but for at DattoCon Miami. But register for those block parties and the Channel Sports Tour as well. Thank you very much. Catch you on the next one. Safe travels, Colin.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.